Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Telling It Like It Is. My name is Jade Alberts, the founder of Peer Guidance. This is a live show. You have any questions, ask away. We will answer them. If you are watching this after the fact and have questions, put them in there. We will be answered. I would like to thank Startup TNT for sponsoring this. The Great Prairies Pitch Marathon is tomorrow. It starts at around 9 a.m. After parties are all over Western Canada, so you can go to startuptnt.com to check them out, sign up, and come do some networking and meet some of the great people that are going to be pitching. But I want to get into this because this is going to be a great talk today with Anthony, the founder of Spontivly. Anthony, how are you today?
Pretty good, Jade. Thanks for having me over.
Oh, I mean, it's been a long time coming. We tried to do this before, and now that Be Live has kind of made it a little more, fan friendly on how we can log on. I'm finally pumped.
I love it. I love it. I love it. It's not Facebook, so it's okay.
Exactly, right? Not Facebook. So, oh, you know what? It's funny that you say that, and Facebook has its own little whatever
Yep.
you want to call it, and I'm happy to have you on because what you have been doing and what you're doing to bring communities together is so important, and even before we get to talking about Mark Cuban's investment in you, I want you to go way back to tell us how you came up with this idea.
Oh man, that goes back to 2019, actually, late 2019. So as you know, I'm originally from Edmonton, Alberta, right?
Yep.
So I used to work at IBM for a number of years, and the very first time we started this, so like I worked at IBM. I came home one day, and my son was like, "Dad, why do you go to work?" He was 4 at the time, and he's like, "Dad, why do you go to work?" And I looked at him, and I'm like, shit, like, how do you, as a parent, how do you tell your kid that you just go to work to pay the bills and put a roof on our heads? Like it just felt hollow and meaningless,
Yep.
and really didn't have an impact. So I spoke to my wife, and I'm like, I need to find something that was more meaningful and really more impactful, because I'm a firm believer that everybody's here for a reason. And we either fulfill our purpose or not. So I quit my job, took up a co-working space in downtown in Edmonton, in startup Edmonton, and just started talking to people. I talked to over 300 people in the downtown core of Edmonton, in front of the YMCA, in the middle of in the middle of fall, and people were looking at me like crazy. They're like, they were like, "Who is this random guy?" And I just talked to them and asking them, just trying to figure out something that that was a pain point. And what was interesting, it was that majority of the people I was talking to were international students. So
Okay.
because of Norquest being there, McEwen University, and just really close proximity to U of A, right? And they were all saying the same thing. They were saying like, hey, I left my city, I left my country, I came to this campus, and it was really hard time connecting to the campus community, and for me as an immigrant, that was really important. I felt I struck a chord to me because I know the importance of community at that time, and I'm coming into this country, so I wanted to solve this problem, and I called up, went to Grant McEwen, and McEwen University, and said like, hey, you have this huge problem with the university students who pay top dollar around engagement. Can I help you? And they're like, yeah, sure. And they gave me an office out there, and we kind of rolled it out. We rolled out a platform at the time. It was a mobile app for university students, and we grew that to about 6,000 students in under 3 months, and realized that this problem that we were trying to solve was not a B2C problem. This is a B2B, because like the departments at the university were like, hey, we're trying to grow this community, and we need measurement on it. Can you give us analytics? And that's where we are today. And then when the pandemic happened, it just blew up because they wanted more analytics on Zoom, because everybody went on Zoom. The little visibility that they had on their community on engagement went away, and they wanted more analytics. So that's how we are today. We're a data company. We're basically a data platform that integrates into all the community suite of tools that companies have, like Slack, Discord, Eventbrite, and Zoom. Think of us like Google Analytics on communities.
And I think that's really cool. And you brought up a good point, right? It's, and I think it's evolved, right? You went from, okay, yeah, we're just social media now. We'll put some posts out there, do some crap like that, and we'll get likes and shares. But the importance of learning that, and I think maybe we have to learn it as an ecosystem or as a company and things along those lines. And now, when you say you have a community manager that oversees everything, these analytics are so important. And I think COVID emphasized that, to saying, hey, if we can't go out there and get them, we're going to have to learn how to proper manage these, how to use them. So how do you use these numbers within an organization to drive engagement and increase that customer lifetime value?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We have to take a step back with this, Jade. So this principle around community is not something that's new. It just became a buzzword during the pandemic, but community existed, since the dawn of time, right? You know, as humans walked, we always wanted to have, it's innate in us to be part of something, have that sense of belonging, right? And the companies that know how to fundamentally build communities are billion-dollar companies. So, in my days at IBM, Salesforce, CRM dominated the space because they built a cult following around community, around the product, around communities. So when you were, a subject matter expert in Salesforce, they fly you out there to the Salesforce conference, talk about the product. That's a community, right? And then if you look at Lululemon, for example, everybody looks at Lululemon as a product, right? And also their brick and mortar store, right? But what's interesting is every single brick and mortar store that Lululemon opens is ingrained in the community. They provide programming. They provide, acts like for, programming around moms groups and yoga classes. Like all of this, it comes into play in terms of that product. So as a consumer, the way we purchase things have changed, right? And then we follow brand followings has changed, right? Peloton's a great example too. I know they've taken a beating, but you don't buy that Peloton bike because of the bike. You buy it because of the community of instructors and the people that belong to that bike, right? So this is there, but we just don't think about it, right? And from Startup TNT to Startup Edmonton to Platform Calgary, all of us are building a community, whether it's from nonprofit to corporate or tech companies. We're all building community, but the data points and making those data points valuable and gaining those insights has been super challenging. I know for a fact, Platform Calgary runs these reports to gain grant funding. How do you get those reports? They're all manual, but they're building a startup ecosystem. So it all depends on, this is happening. We just don't think about it, right? And there's an education piece that's missing. And much to when we just chatted about what happened 10, 15 years ago when someone said hey, I'm a social media manager, and we were like, what the hell is that? Right? So there's an evolution that's happening around there. That there's people are hiring community managers. There's an education piece, and then and this is happening as we speak, right? Because we're using these tech stacks that are decentralized, like it or not, but we need the analytics on those customer communities.
No, absolutely. And we're getting some good comments on LinkedIn here from Alexander and Gloria saying, they love what you're doing and keep carrying on. But I think that's, I think you hit it 15 years ago. We've kind of moved into this, and now we're moving even into virtual worlds, right? With Web3 and the metaverse. And how do you think that is how are you going to integrate those communities into, the communities that are already, becoming a little more well-established within companies?
Yeah. We're essentially a data company. So it doesn't matter if it's the metaverse or Web3 or Web2, we sit on top. And what we're positioning ourselves is to be the Google Analytics around community. And the foundation of the metaverse is around community as well, right? That's basic principle. And then, going back to, we just talked about NFTs, DAOs, cryptos. All of this is community based, and it's so fundamental to have the analytics as an organization around that it makes it very important, right? If you're creating a DAO, it's very community based.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and I just spent, last week in Toronto at a crypto conference, and you really get that, right? The people that are there, that are community,
Yeah.
even here in Calgary, the local, like Mike from Mastrius is setting up NFTs. We're setting up, how to mint them, how to market them, how to do it, because again, it is such a big community that some of these artists, and that's just one silo of it, that need to tap into,
Yeah.
and people need to understand how to properly do that.
Yeah, exactly. So like with our software, we sit on top of all the tech stacks. It could be Zoom, it could be WhatsApp, it could be even on Signal. You know what I mean? Like, or
Yeah.
Telegram. Those are all communities, and you need the analytics around it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, as I say, numbers don't lie, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I know, I mean, you say, I mean, you started your company up in Alberta, and you've been just expanding rapidly, especially through the United States. And maybe they understand this a little better than us. I mean, you can probably talk to that a little bit, but I mean, you're setting up an office in St. Pete where you are now. You're going to be in Atlanta. So, what drove your success, into expansion? Because a lot of people saying, "Oh, I got to get to the States," and don't know how to do it or flounder. So maybe talk about your successes and maybe some of the learnings that you've had from it.
Yeah, like I think we really wanted to build our company out in Canada, but I think from an adoption standpoint and from an understanding standpoint, Canada is behind on this, and that's okay. Like
Yeah.
we are predominantly a late adopter, and as a country, and that's fine. But like for in terms of success and getting there, like we just started, but every day we're just going at it, right? So for us, it was really partnering with a region that understands what we're doing, number one, and also as a founder, your job is to make sure your company is successful. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Is like, where do you have the best opportunity to be successful? And sometimes it's not in your own backyard, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
you have to be okay with that. I think founders have to understand that it doesn't have to be in Canada, right? Because if the region doesn't understand, you have to go where you're number one, you can be successful, and two, dominate the market space. That's your goal.
I mean that's just bang on, right? We talk about that, working with early stage companies, and things like that. When you're looking at where you need to be and where you need to go, it might not be here in Alberta. It might be in Toronto. It might be in
Yeah.
in United States. God, maybe and maybe it's in Europe, but you have to figure that out very quickly. And obviously, you guys did. And so, why do you? So once you figured that out, how did you rapidly expand throughout the U.S.?
Well, yeah, I think we first we set up we backfilled our sales funnel here in Canada. So we were in Edmonton. We knew where the market was going, and I quickly called a bunch of these companies and said like, hey, you guys are hiring. I saw the market trend on this, right? A lot of community managers and then build those relationships, and then 90% of our customers at that time were US based, so it just made sense. And then from a strategic standpoint, where do we land that we can dominate the market space? Because we had competition that came in while we were here in Canada that were raising gobs of money in the coastal region, so like in New York and San Francisco. So that was a lot for me and our team and what we were doing. That was the signal that we're on to something when we saw competition coming in the space and really knew, okay, they probably don't know the space as well as we do because we sat in the university talking to these customers and really honing in on the problem, and figuring this out. But they were able to solidify like investment and grow their companies. But we need to get out of here to be able to uh, be competitive and get into a region where we can dominate above what they were doing.
No, I love that, and I think that's such a good piece of advice for early stage startups is to figure out where your client is, figure out where your customer base is going to be, and then go get them. I mean, it's irrelevant. I mean, work's a thing you do, not a place you go. And that's just something that you have to understand. If you have to be in Florida or LA or Atlanta or Austin, I don't care where it is, you got to be there. You got to be in front of them. You got to be banging on their doors.
Yeah, exactly. And you just have to, right? You got to do whatever it takes to make sure your company survives and make sure you have optimal growth, right? I think that's where the one thing is, like, for myself and for my Marissa, my co-founder, we do not take an opportunity for granted. Like, every opportunity that's presented to us,
Yeah.
we take it. And that's how you build luck, and that's how you build success. Like, getting into investments and even building relationships with VCs here. It took a 2.5, and that's the thing. I think a lot of people don't talk about time, how the length of time. Like, for us to get to this point took 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
And they, I think TechCrunch and all these articles that come out, oh yeah, Spontivly has raised 1.2 million and they're closing their bridge round. They got investment from Mark Cuban, but man, that took 3 years of grinding, and that took three, and it's going to take 3 more years of us grinding even more. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, there is, and it's consistent. And this is why I love sports. Is like, no one, let's use Connor McDavid as an example. Well, Connor McDavid did not make to where he is without, 13 years of grinding when he was a teenager. You know what I mean? Like, from
Yeah.
the time that he left his home, it was consistent grind until he made it to pros and until he got drafted. Not everybody's a Connor McDavid, but, like, that is what it takes, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And you're not overnight going to raise capital. Like, that's not how it's going to happen. That's not how it's going to happen. You got to build those relationships within, for 2-3 years at least. And that's the reality of it, right?
And again, I mean, I'm talking with Anthony, the founder of Spontively.com. You can click on their website in the comments section, and I think that's such a valuable lesson that some people need to learn. They assume that they're going to get it. They assume that they're going to get X amount or angels or whatever it is, and it's hard freaking work, and you have to show results. I mean, as you can tell from the jerseys behind me, I'm a sports fan. I'm a huge Mark Cuban fan. I know some people may not like him, but I love him. And when I saw you make that announcement, I was like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing ever. And just because I am a huge fan of his. So when you're going out there and you're searching for these investments and you get someone like a Mark Cuban, how I don't know anybody that's been invested by Mark Cuban other than yourself. So, how do you, get to get to that level to knock on his door or have him, realize who Spontively is?
I like these posts that come on LinkedIn that, some of these guys that post like, I raise capital without a pitch deck. I'm like, great, good for you. You're probably a founder that has, that came from Harvard or Yale, and you probably exited a company, and you have that, you have that backing. But
Yeah.
for myself and for my co-founder Marissa, I'll be honest with you, we're not your typical founders, and we enjoy it because here's the thing, like, our numbers don't lie, and the way we operate is that we're not from Harvard. We're not from, we're not your typical founders in the Valley, and we're not your typical founders in Canada. Look, we're minority founders at the end of the day, right? Marissa is underrepresented as a female, and so am I. So the real story is two underrepresented founders raised money from a billionaire is the real story.
Yeah.
And I think that is more profound than anything else. And how we get to Mark Cuban goes back to 3 years of work, and every single investment meeting, every single learning lesson, every single relationship that I built in my network and Marissa's network led to Mark Cuban, if that makes sense.
No, I think it does, right? I mean, you just don't walk in and say, "Hey, Mark," I mean, and your comment is not, we're not your typical founders. I don't know what a typical founder would be if you were to ask me that question. I
Yeah.
would be like, right? It's like, I've seen them; they're all over the map, right? So, I think that's what makes entrepreneurs so great. Is you've got founders that come from all walks of race and color, and it makes it such a good ecosystem to be in, because I think you have to be a little bit different to be an entrepreneur personally. I know my opinion, right? Like, you have to think outside the box. You have to be able to take those risks. And a lot of people, like yourself, saying, when your son comes to you and says, "Dad, why are you doing this?" Like, you know what? Like, not many people can do what you did to say, "I'm going to do this." So, kudos to you, going back to that story from the beginning. But I think that's what makes you a successful entrepreneur, is that risk, that you know what, everything is going to lead to Mark Cuban. And if it wasn't Mark Cuban, maybe it was Kevin O'Leary, or whoever it may have been, right? That makes you successful, and you understand,
Yeah.
what it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, but going back to that point, Jade, I think
Yeah.
the numbers, like, I'm a numbers guy, and numbers
Yeah.
don't lie, right? Like, when it comes to investment, especially in the US and VC funding, only 1% goes to female founders.
Yeah.
Only 1%, less than 1% goes to female founders. Less than 1% goes to Black, Latinx. And the numbers there do not lie.
No,
Right? I want to make sure like that's clear. That's what I meant by this, because it is there. It's not talked about, but it's very apparent. Okay, and I think what we're trying to do. I think once we, my goal and our goal here is to bridge that gap once when we do get to that point with our company and coming back to the community. But I don't want to misrepresent how hard it was for us to raise capital. Right? It's hard. It's hard to raise capital, but it's even harder for a founder that is not from Stanford, that is not, from Harvard, and is from Canada. There's no secret sauce here. Like, it is extremely difficult, right? But perseverance, grit, and consistency. Like, I can tell you one thing, and I'm bullish on our team. And like, there's an investor asked us this question, and I love my response to him was like, Canada is phenomenal, because if you can make it out of there, you're thriving anywhere else. Like, one thing Canada does right is, like, man, if you can survive in Canada when it comes to like funding and all that, you can survive in the US. Because the problem with the US is they throw money at it, right? You just need to be gritty and survive in Canada, because you don't get money. You got to figure out how to survive. Yeah. You know what I mean? So they asked me, like, how are you going to be beating your competitors who are raising boatloads of money in this space? I'm like, great. They're the New York Yankees, and we're playing Moneyball all day long.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
I love that analogy.
I'll play Moneyball all day long.
Exactly. Oh, I agree. Well, speaking of it, now you're rapidly expanding. You've got a little investment. You got Mark Cuban, obviously, being a not only an investor but a champion and promoting you. So what's next for you guys?
We're rapidly expanding. We're heading into different markets. We're positioning ourselves into Web3 and crypto. Essentially, like, we're looking at ourselves as Google Analytics for communities. Mm-hmm. And even going into this economy right now, more and more companies are going to be leaning into community, and that's a fact, right? We went through the pandemic leaning into community. That's going to be the moat for companies going in. How do they create that flywheel and build that brand loyalty and engagement in their customers and potential customers? So it's already happening. Like, I'll give a good example. We had a company who raised VC money who are saying, like, hey, my VCs told me to grow, and I have over 2 million followers on TikTok. Now they're telling me to turn that into revenue. I don't know how.
Yeah.
So we're positioning ourselves for massive growth here in the recession, and really pushing ourselves into this opportunity. and that's where we're looking to expand.
Oh, it's awesome, and again, I've been a fan and of what you guys have been doing, and I think you're a story that we're going to be telling a lot in the near future here, especially in our Alberta Prairies ecosystem, about what you've done, where you're going, where you've come from, and how you got there. I just can't wait to watch the rest of your journey. It's going to be exciting.
It's gonna be super exciting. I can't wait to come back and tell that story in person too. So more than happy to build out that what we're doing here. We're just going. We're just on this ride. That's crazy. But always have our we have our place in Canada, and we have our place in I have my heart in Edmonton. So always love the ecosystem there and in Alberta. So happy to come back and share the story.
Oh, and that's awesome. And I mean, again, you hear me say it all the time. We've got a very collaborative, very, very supportive ecosystem here. And I mean, does it have its flaws? Absolutely. Like any ecosystem probably does. But I mean, we're on the right road.
Yeah. There's no denying, every ecosystem has its flaws, has its, nobody's perfect. Right. But as long as there's, that willingness to change and the willingness to be better, I think that's that first step. And then being able to be collaborative, going back to that mentality. I think one thing I would like to share with founders too is that the length of time, not only the length of time, but it's always coming from a place of giving versus taking, right? These relationships are, if you really take it from if you really look at building relationships from a transactional approach, you're not going to get anywhere. Right? For me, you want to build a relationship that has more meaning, and at one day maybe I look at it like, how can it help versus how can it take, I'll use you, Jade, as an example, right? I'm a strong proponent on what you do. I know in the very beginning I'm like, hey, I'm totally against Facebook and what they stand for and what they do, but I was never it was never like, I'm never going to be on your show. You know what I mean? It's like it's like, hey, let's do this, but I just need a different platform. Even though this is going on Facebook, I just can't build a community company. I just can't build a community company and be on Facebook.
I know.
You know what I'm saying?
And my hat was died using Be Live because that's the only platform that they use. So as soon as they got into LinkedIn and YouTube and Google and all that, I was like, all right, I can get Anthony on.
Yeah. So, but we've been talking for 2.5 years. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's that building a sense of relationship and trust. Like people will do business with you if they trust you.
Absolutely.
Plain and simple. Right?
People always
you will raise money from people if they believe in your vision. Right.
And that will never change.
Yeah, that will never change.
Never.
I think yeah, it's not like, hey, I got this cool product and I'm going to get money from investments. No, it's like, if you got this cool product, are you solving a pain point, but also coming from a sense of relationship and building that from that investor pool or the angel investors or your community is so important, right?
Oh, couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. But I don't want, coming to our last question here. I know that's a great piece of advice. So you can't use it for the last question here.
Okay.
So, even though I love that because again, it's people. You invest in people, especially at early stages, right? You're investing in the founder more than you are the actual company at certain stages because your belief in them and what they're probably going to be able to do. But if you had one piece of advice for a small business startup, what would that be, Anthony?
Be persistent, because people are going to always tell you no. But if you really believe in your mission and what you do, that either you're going to build a successful company, even if it's, success is not defined by how much money you raise, but what you do with that opportunity. So there's always going to be people that are going to say no to you, and there's always going to be people that are going to bet against you. just prove them wrong.
Nothing's a better feeling than proving somebody wrong. Right? Yeah. Like, in my opinion, right? When someone says no, or you're not going to win, it just gives me that extra little,
let's do it.
I can show you.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Anthony, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, your knowledge. And obviously we're all champions here, and any support that you need, we're all here for you as well. And anybody wants to find out more information about them, just click on Spontivly's website in the comment section. And again, tomorrow is you're going to see a lot of I think we're at 195 companies for the pitch marathon, where you might have maybe pitched in the first one. I'm not 100% sure.
We did. Yeah, we did.
Right. So you have all these companies. We're going to have after parties. Networking is a big part of growing your system and growing your company. So we have 5 parties across Western Canada. Check it out. But again, Anthony, thank you so much for your time today, and keep on being awesome. And we're all here cheering for you.
Thanks, Jade.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.